Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reading an article from the South China Morning Post on how Russia dismisses the Ukraine plan and says, let's decide it on the battlefield. And so here's the thing. If you're winning a war and you know your enemy is going to continue fighting against you like this, and the West is going to continue backing them up, and they back in 2014 overthrew a democratically elected government, you don't really have many options here. And Russia has tried over and over again to have a peace process. They tried last year in the United States, and I believe it was the United Kingdom, that helped make sure that that peace process did not go through. And so at this point, they know not to trust the word of the United States. And so Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov called Ukrainian proposals for restoring its pre-invasion territory unrealizable and said that if Ukraine's allies want war, they can have it. So here's the thing. They've been saying that Russia's been running out of ammunition for since the beginning of the war. And right now, it sounds like Russia's extremely confident that they're going to win this war. I just heard that the Russian version of Coca-Cola just overtook prior Coca-Cola sales. And so the thing is, these people understand that they're winning by fighting against the West, by fighting against the Western Empire, the United States. So let's see what else they have to say. Lavrov's comment jibes with a view taking hold among Ukraine's allies that the war is likely to go on for years. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't think he said that at all either. That's not what that said at all. So no, I don't think this war is going to go on for years, particularly when this Judeo-Islamic War 2023 is going on. I mean, the United States cannot just keep sending money to both Ukraine and Israel at this point. And so I do think that Ukraine war is probably going to, for the most part, end next year. I think Russia is going to take places like Kharkiv, like Odessa, and that's going to be the end of the war. And they're going to make sure to dismantle the government as much as possible, dismantle the military as much as possible. Speaking at a news conference at the United Nations on Saturday, the minister called a 10-point peace blueprint promoted by Kyiv completely not feasible. It is not possible to implement this. It is not realistic, and everybody understands this, but at the same time, they say this is the only basis for negotiation. And so he's saying, Lavrov, if you insist on the battlefield, okay, let's decide on the battlefield. So is that, if you're listening to the Western propaganda apparatus, if you're completely brainwashed, you must be thinking, well, any second now, Russia's going to collapse. But does that sound like someone who's a part of a country representing a country that's going to collapse? No, I don't think so, obviously. Okay. Russia's ruble falls to lowest value against US dollar since the Ukraine war began. That's not that big of a deal, honestly. It's a matter of, like, are they exporting more? Is the value of their currency domestically important? Is it still a value? Are they able to get enough food on the table? Are they able to afford a home? Things like that. And by all indications, yes, Russia is doing very well. Or all indications that matter. The diplomat renewed long-standing Russian claims that the West was to blame for the war, which erupted into a full-scale conflict with Russia's invasion last year. He also said that a UN proposal to revive a deal to allow safe passage for Ukrainian grain exports would not work. Okay, so they're not going back to that because, from what I understand, Ukraine was using that to bring in equipment to further harass Russia during the war. Okay, so they do blame the West for the war, and by all indications, the West is a major supporter of the war, and in all likelihood, they helped overthrow the democratically elected government in 2014. There is I think it's a judicial review, I think it's like 1 million words long or something like that, 100,000 words long, review of what happened during the Maidan overthrow of the democratically elected government, Yanukovych, or however you pronounce it. And it does seem to confirm that it was not the president's orders that led to the snipers firing. It seems like the snipers fired from protester-controlled buildings. Okay, so let's see what else they have to say in this article. Lavrov added that Moscow left the Black Sea grain initiative because promises made to Russia, including on removing sanctions on a Russian bank and reconnecting it to the global SWIFT system, had not been met. So exactly. I mean, the thing is, if you are fulfilling your obligations of an agreement and the other side is not fulfilling their obligations to the agreement, you don't have to follow the agreements. They've rescinded the agreement. It wasn't Russia that really backtracked out of this. It was the West that did because they didn't follow through on their side. He said that the latest UN proposals to revive that export corridor for Ukrainian agricultural products were simply not realistic. Lavrov said that he would visit Pyongyang next month to continue negotiations with his counterpart there, off the back of recent agreement made by Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Moscow. So Kim Jong-un, very close ally of Russia at this point. There is an axis of resistance forming against the United States. Earlier in the day, the minister denounced the United States and the West as self-interested defenders of a fading international order. Completely agree. A weekly curated round of social, political, and economic stories from China and how they would impact the world. Oh, wait, this is something else. Hold on. The United States and its subordinate Western collective are continuing to fuel conflict, which artificially divide humanity into hostile blocks and hamper the achievement of overall aims. And that's what the multipolar world is trying to fight against. They are saying, well, wait a minute, we don't actually have to be at each other's throat because the United States tells us to. We can actually get along and trade and create win-win cooperation. And the United States hates that because they benefit, they thrive off of chaos and disorder. And so he goes on to say they're doing everything they can to prevent the formation of a genuine multipolar world. Lavrov understands what's going on. Vladimir Putin understands what's going on. Xi Jinping understands what's going on. President Assad in Syria understands what's going on. Kim Jong-un in North Korea understands what's going on. A new multipolar world is forming. They're trying to force the world to play according to their own self-centered rules. Completely agree. As for the 19-month war in Ukraine, he recapped some historical complaints going back to the 1991 breakup of the Soviet Union and alluded to the billions of dollars that the US and Western allies have spent in supporting Kyiv, but he did not delve into the current fighting. Okay, let's see what else. For a second year in a row, the General Assembly is taking place with no end to the war in sight. A 3-month-long Ukrainian counteroffensive has gone slower than Kyiv hoped, making modest advances but no breakthroughs. Saying they made modest advances is an exaggeration. From what I understand, it's more likely than not that they actually lost more territory than they gained. And I was reading some stuff showing that they actually, when it comes to making offensives, they're actually like the slowest offensive in at least the last 100 years that's occurred. It's just the Ukrainian offensive shouldn't even be called an offensive. It's been a complete disaster. They've run out of people to send into war too. So they keep throwing bodies at the problem, trying to get more and more land, and they've run out of young people to fight for them, young males. Now they're trying to get females conscripted. They're trying to get old people conscripted. I mean, they're doing everything possible except for ending the war, and they're just going to cease to be a nation at the end of this because there's going to be no one left. Okay. Ukraine's seat in the assembly hall were empty for at least part of Lavrov's speech. An American diplomat wrote on a notepad in our country section of the audience, okay, so they're not paying attention. Since invading in February 2022, Russia has offered a number of explanations for what it calls a special military operation in Ukraine. Among them, claims that Kyiv was oppressing Russian speakers in Ukraine's east, and so Moscow had to help them, that Ukraine's growing ties with the West in recent years pose a risk to Russia, and that is also threatened by NATO's eastward expansion over the decades. Again, I can go over why all of those are objectively true. So they are oppressing Russian speakers. They set a building on fire. A ton of young Russian speakers were killed. I believe that was out in the east. They had the Maidan coup. They overthrew a Russian, I don't want to say they were a Russian-aligned Ukrainian government because they were actually kind of playing the fence between EU and Russia. But they did overthrow a government that was more aligned with Russia than the governments that came after it. They do think that Ukraine's ties with the West and that the NATO expansion is a threat to them, and they have every reason to believe that. I mean, look at what happened with the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States did not like to have the Soviet Union in its own backyard like that. And so it's just hypocrisy and stupidity to think that there isn't a zone of influence, a sphere of influence. There isn't places where countries shouldn't tread in order to not threaten other countries. And the United States has consistently shown that it is a threatening power, that NATO is a threatening alliance. They attack countries all across the world. Look what they're doing in Ukraine. Look what they're doing in Israel right now. Lavrov hammered on those themes in his General Assembly speech last year, and he alluded again Saturday to what Russia perceives as NATO's improper encroachment. And NATO said they wouldn't encroach. That was, again, another thing that NATO went back on its word on. But his address looked as though at it through a wide-angle lens, surveying a landscape as Russia sees it of Western countries' efforts to cling to outsized influence in global affairs. He portrayed the effort as doomed, and it absolutely is doomed. If anything, the Judeo-Islamic War of 2023 definitely showed that, because I believe there were a lot of powers that were subservient to the United States in the Islamic world, and they're definitely not going to be able to be subservient to the United States after this, because Arabic and Islamic powers, Arabic and Islamic people throughout the entire world are very, very angry about what the West is doing right now in Palestine, and for good reason. Okay, so the rest of the planet is sick of it. Lavrov argued they don't want to live under anybody's yoke anymore. Obviously, that shows, he said, in the growth of such groups as BRICS, the Developing Economies Coalition that currently includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and recently invited Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Our future is being shaped by a struggle between the global majority in favor of a fairer distribution of global benefits and civilized diversity, and between the few who wield neocolonial methods of subjugation in order to maintain their domination, which is slipping through their hands. So we see that on and over and over and over again. The multipolar world is winning. They got more countries into BRICS, and they were very prominent countries, regional powers. They are winning the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and they are definitely swaying the Islamic world, the Islamic civilization, on the side of the multipolar bloc over this Judeo-Islamic conflict in Palestine. So that's our article from South China Morning Post. Completely agree with what Lavrov was saying here, and just interesting things going on in the world. So if you found this to be informative, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel on both YouTube and Rumble. We are creating more and more content on Rumble, and we are transitioning as much as possible to Rumble. Please leave us a comment in the comment box. We appreciate all of your comments, questions, concerns, and critiques. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.